Hello again, everyone, and welcome back. You know, security is hard. There's all kinds of things out there in the wild that are targeting our Linux servers, and we have to keep our eyes peeled. I mean, even if you don't have the word security in your job title, we can often feel like security professionals because just like security professionals, we always have to keep an eye on our logs, look at what's coming in, and block things that shouldn't be coming in. But there's one thing that we can do to 100% protect our servers from anyone on the outside trying to break in. Unplug it. Just unplug your server, throw it in a closet, and I guarantee you nobody will ever break into it. Now, in all seriousness, when it comes to security, it's all about layers. That's why people refer to security as kind of like an onion. You have different layers, and the more layers that you have in your security onion, so to speak, the better your security is overall. Now, there's no 100% effective security solution, like I mentioned, aside from unplugging your server and making it useless, so we just have to include as many layers as we can. Some of those layers include, but aren't limited to, setting up a firewall, maybe something like fail to ban. There's a number of different solutions out there, many of which I've covered on this channel, fail to ban being one of my favorites. But another solution actually entered my radar recently, CrowdSec. I mean, just think about it for a moment. Crowdsourcing security. I mean, if an outside attacker is trying to get into your server, chances are they're trying to get into others as well. Maybe you have some bad IPs that are targeting your server right now, and maybe you block those IPs and life is good. You go to sleep and you're happy knowing that you have, well, thwarted an attack. But that information is more valuable than just your server. I mean, if those IPs are going after your server, chances are they're going after other servers as well. So the idea here with CrowdSec is to harness this information about all of these bad IPs or potentially bad IPs, collect the metrics and metadata from those sources, and then define, well, a list of actions or something to do in response to those IPs that they're seen somewhere else. Now again, in this video, I'm going to talk about CrowdSec, and that's essentially exactly what it does. So let's go ahead and see CrowdSec in action. To set up this example, I have two servers right here. These are remote servers. I have my web server, and it's simply running Apache. I just wanted a good example. Web servers are very common, but web servers aren't the only thing that CrowdSec is able to protect. Again, that's just an example. And then over here, I have a server that I named Attack Server. So the idea is I'm going to simulate an attack from the attack server over here to the web server. And then we'll see how CrowdSec responds. CrowdSec is already installed on the web server, so if all goes well, CrowdSec will detect the attack and then block the attack server. Now, before we actually go through with this example, I want to give you guys a very important disclaimer. If you execute any attack to or from a server, you need to make sure that you have permission to do this. VPS providers, for example, might flag your account if you don't have permission to do this, and it might be against their terms of service, which might mean that they could even disable your account. If you are doing this on company servers, maybe you want to impress your boss and show them a very awesome solution, you might find yourself being walked out the door because something like this could be against your employment policies, so just make sure that you're careful and you have written permission to do this. On my end, I'm doing this for entertainment value, and I also want to show you how CrowdSec works as well, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, what I'm going to do first and foremost is just SSH into the web server from the attack server. So this isn't actually a simulated attack. I'm only doing this to show you that I have the ability to communicate over the network from the attack server to the web server. So I'll go ahead and press enter. And then I'll put in the password. And as you can see, I was able to successfully SSH into the web server. And that just proves that I do have connectivity between the two servers. So to make this more interesting, what I'm going to do is tail the CrowdSec log. So I'm going to run sudo tail-f. I want to follow the log. And the log file is located in var log, like other log files are. And the name is crowdsec.log. So I'm going to add a bunch of white space here. I just want to make it obvious what information is actually new. So what I'm going to do right now is attempt to SSH into the web server, but this time I'm going to enter the password incorrectly on purpose. And there again is the IP address. I'll just press enter. And for the password, I'll just press a bunch of random letters and press enter. And again. And again. And as you can see here, it looks like CrowdSec has actually noticed that there's some activity coming from the IP of the attack server, and it went ahead and blocked it. But let's go ahead and confirm that. So we have this IP address right here, and it's under the impression that it tried to execute an SSH brute force. So if I go over here to this server, does the IP address match? Looks like it matches to me. 172.105.10.45, 172.105.10.45. All right, so far so good. So what I'm going to do is attempt to SSH into that server again, and let's see what happens. Well, so far, nothing. Nothing is happening. And that means that it's actually working. So essentially, what happened is that CrowdSec noticed that I was trying to essentially brute force the password, even though I was just guessing over and over again manually. I wasn't running any brute force script or anything like that. But that doesn't matter. CrowdSec saw that the activity was happening, and then the firewall bouncer went ahead and blocked the attack. So back over here on the web server, what I could do is run a special command and inspect what the decisions are that CrowdSec has made. And we have a dedicated command for that. It's cscli, and of course I'll need sudo. And we want to check the decisions. We want to list the decisions. And this is going to be a lot of text, so I'll temporarily make the font size a bit smaller. And as you can see here on this line, we have a ban for this particular IP address because it violated the SSH brute force scenario. And as you can see, that particular server was blocked, which is exactly what we want, because when someone's trying to get into our server and they're trying over and over again, that's going to get CrowdSec's attention, and then it'll take action. So that's all well and good. You can see that CrowdSec works, but how exactly do you install it? So what I'm going to do is go back in time. Yes, I'm going to go back in time to before I installed CrowdSec, and I'll show you what the process is like. All right, so I have successfully rewound time, and now I'm back to before I installed CrowdSec on this server. And like I mentioned, I have these two servers right here, one in each tab, and this one right here is my web server. It has Apache installed currently, but the app that's installed really doesn't matter. CrowdSec can actually support other apps as well, not just web servers. I just installed Apache as an example. I wanted to make sure that CrowdSec successfully detected the fact that Apache is installed on the server, and if everything goes well, it should automatically enable the appropriate collections for Apache. And again, I have this attack server right here, but we're actually going to focus on the web server for right now. So what I'm going to do right now is install CrowdSec. The installation process is fairly easy and straightforward. So what I'm going to do is just paste the commands into my terminal that I'll copy from the official documentation for CrowdSec. I'll have a link to that documentation page in the description down below. In addition to that, I'll also have a link down there to the blog article for this video as well. You can also get the commands from there. I'll have a link to both down below in the description, so just check that if you want to go ahead and follow along with me. So here's the first command right here. And this command itself won't actually install CrowdSec, but it will set up the repository so that way it will enable me to install CrowdSec. And this script is actually specific to Debian and Ubuntu, as you can see from the name of the script right here. On this particular server, I am running Ubuntu Server. And if you're running something else, you could check the official documentation page down below for instructions for your distribution. Now, if you're like me and you squirm anytime you see a curl command being piped to sudo bash, I don't blame you. It's always important to check out a script and inspect it before you run it. I've already done that off camera, and it's fine. So in my case, I don't mind continuing. But there is an alternate command in their documentation that you can use to manually set up the repository if you prefer to avoid curl commands altogether. I'll leave that up to you. So I'll press enter. And there we go. And now the repository is set up. And as you can see right here, the verbiage mentioned that it ran apt update, so we won't have to run that ourselves. We should be free to install CrowdSec right now, so let's do it. And installing CrowdSec, like I mentioned, is easy and straightforward. In fact, all I have to do is run sudo apt install and then CrowdSec. It's that simple. And my font size here is quite large because I want to make sure that anyone out there who might be vision impaired will have an easier time seeing the content on the screen, but that also causes a wrap issue. As you see here, some of these lines are actually wrapping to a new line. But when we look through the output, we can see some very important things here. For example, we see the verbiage right here, installing collection CrowdSecurity/Apache 2. And that's actually why I installed Apache 2 on this server. I wanted to make sure that CrowdSec was able to detect that and set that up for me. Now, of course, you can actually enable or disable collections at any time. I think it's really cool that when CrowdSec was being installed, it just went ahead and detected what I was running on this server and enabled the appropriate collections automatically. That's really cool. It also detected that I'm running OpenSSH as well, which is very important to protect, by the way. As an aside, it's better to set up a firewall and not allow SSH from anywhere other than your IP, but that's another video altogether. In fact, I have another video on my channel that goes over securing OpenSSH if you want to check that out. So at this point, we have a very logical default configuration, and that's really cool. You can also download other collections as well. That's outside the scope of this video, but I just wanted you guys to know that you can do that. And like I mentioned earlier, you can enable or disable collections at any time. And that brings me to the cscli command, which we now have on our system since we installed CrowdSec as part of the package. And this allows us to interact with CrowdSec on the command line. Now, we will need sudo. And the first command that I'm going to show you is cscli hub list. And I will need to lower the font size for this because it's going to wrap all over the place, so hopefully you guys are still able to see this when I run it. And here you can verify the various collections that were enabled, so we should be all set there. Now, if you want to enable or disable collections yourself, perhaps you want to enable a collection that you've downloaded, then I'll show you the command for that. It's user share CrowdSec wizard.sh -c, and I will need sudo because for these commands you need either sudo access or root privileges. So I'll go ahead and run it. And right here we get a list of services that we can monitor. We can use the up and down arrow keys on our keyboard to change the selection, and then we can change whether or not something is selected by pressing space. Then you could tab over to continue to go to the next screen, but it's beyond the scope of this video. I just wanted to show you guys what this looks like. So again, if you want to enable other collections, then this command right here is the one that you'll use. So now that CrowdSec is installed, there's actually one more thing that we'll need to do in order to make sure that it's actually protecting our server. And as you just saw, the Apache and SSH collections were enabled automatically, along with a few others. But having CrowdSec installed by itself won't actually protect you. Now, to put this into a short summary, the way that CrowdSec is set up is that CrowdSec itself will detect attacks, but it's not going to do anything about those attacks. CrowdSec's only job is to detect things that are coming at it, and it's actually a job for bouncers to take action, so CrowdSec will detect and bouncers will basically do something about it. But if you don't install a bouncer, then all you have at this point is the ability to detect attacks, so we'll definitely need to install a bouncer to make sure that CrowdSec is fully effective. So what I'm going to do is run sudo apt install, and I'm going to install two packages. And the first one is the CrowdSec Firewall Bouncer. When CrowdSec successfully detects an attack, we want the Firewall Bouncer to take action and create a firewall rule to block where that attack is coming from. I'll also install CrowdSec Firewall Bouncer NF tables. So here we have the actual bouncer itself, because again, we want to set up firewall rules whenever CrowdSec detects an attack. And specifically in the case of Ubuntu, we have the NF tables bouncer here. And together, these things right here should give us the complete solution. So let's go ahead and install these packages. And there's going to be some additional dependencies here, and that's okay. I'll just press enter. And there we go. We now have the bouncers installed. And now at this point, we have the complete solution all set up and ready to go. Alright, so at the beginning of the video, I showed you guys an example attack scenario, and then after that, I showed you an example of the installation process for CrowdSec. But what if I told you that it has a dashboard available as well? Well, it does. And we're going to check that out right now. I'm going to install it. It's actually a Docker container. And the dashboard in particular is Metabase. That's what provides the dashboard layer for CrowdSec. That's what we'll be installing. But since it is a Docker container, we will need to have Docker installed first, so I'll take care of that. So in the case of Ubuntu, the package name is docker.io. And we'll let that install. And now that's done. So in order to install Metabase, what we're going to do is run sudo, and then we'll use cscli. And since we want to set up the dashboard, we'll type dashboard. And we want to set up the dashboard. And we'll set it up to listen on 0.0.0.0. And it should be that simple. So I'll press enter. And Y, and then enter. And all that did was give it permission to set up the CrowdSec group on the system, which is okay with me. And now it's installing, so I'll be right back as soon as it's done. All right, so as you can see right here, the Metabase container is all set and it's ready to go. And it even gives us the login information right here, which is definitely very helpful. As I'm sure most of you know, the IP address of 0.0.0.0 here within the URL, that just means that this particular application is open to the public internet. And here you can see that it's running on port 3000. Now I'm sure it goes without saying, but you should definitely firewall that particular port. We don't really want this open to the public internet. Setting up a firewall is beyond the scope of this video, but I definitely wanted to mention that. You should definitely make sure that other people aren't able to get to this port. So what I'm going to do is drop down here to a web browser. And then I'll paste the IP address up here in the address bar. And like you saw in the output, the dashboard is running on port 3000, so I'll type that in. I'll press enter. And here it is. So, because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy the username right here. So let's grab that. And then here, I'll paste that in. Then I'll copy the password. And then I'll paste that as well. And let's sign in. And here we have the dashboard. So as you can see, we can check out the decisions, the alerts. This is really cool. So I'll click on the alert history. And we can see some alerts. Some of these alerts are for the IP address that I designated as the attack server. And we have some other IP addresses here as well that are for other servers somewhere on the internet, because apparently other people have been trying to get into this server since I recorded the previous section. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see the information that's being provided here. So we have the IP addresses. We also have listed here the countries where the traffic is coming in from. We have some messages right here that's going to help us understand better what exactly is going on here. So I see how many events have been triggered. And then if I go back, we can also see a list of decisions as well. And this is a great way to visually see what's going on with CrowdSec. Now, if you're like me and you love the command line, you could just continue to use the command line to find all of this information. But maybe there's someone else at your company that wants to see something in their web browser, maybe something that's easier to get to. well, we have a dashboard, and that's pretty cool. So I'll leave it up to you guys to dive into the dashboard and see what other cool things you can find there. But anyway, for our purposes today, I think that includes what we're going to work on for this video. So far, CrowdSec is very cool. It's a unique way of going about security, and I like that. Now, admittedly, I just started using CrowdSec as of this video, so I don't have a final opinion overall, but so far so good. And if you guys want to see more content about CrowdSec, let me know in the comments down below. Just let me know what you want to see or what you want me to test. Let me know if there's demand for this subject, and if there is, I'll consider doing more videos about CrowdSec. If you like this video, make sure you click that like button. That lets YouTube know that, well, you want to see more content just like this. And it also lets me know that you want to see more security content as well. Anyway, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.